October 7th, regular scheduled OJRSA meeting to order. Y'all would please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Let's pray. Father, thank you again for this day. Thank you for watching over us, keeping us safe. Father, we do pray for those who are still in harm's way. Father, pray for those that are suffering. Father, we just pray that in some way we can help, we can be used by you. Father, we just thank you again for all the many blessings you show us each and every day. We pray for our family. We pray for our country. Father, we pray for our area. And Father, we just pray again that we can be useful in your kingdom. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public session, anybody like to speak? Move on to approval of minutes, Board of Commissioners meeting September 9th. Have that in the packet.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion or question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, Finance Administration meeting, September 24th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On September 24th, Finance and Administration Committee met. We received an update on some of our current projects. There was a recommendation to this board of approval for the updated personnel policy manual. It's a little bit later on the agenda. We also discussed whether or not we could join together for the rate study and feasibility. We received the email back. As far as all of us, all the cities applying for RIA, or whether or not we can use one from last year for Seneca. So that is still up to each individual municipality. Then also, we scheduled a meeting for the RA change order. That was a little bit later on, but we handled that as well. And that was all of the action that was taken at that one. Mostly it was informational case.
Any questions for Ms. Myers?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? O&P meeting of September 18th was canceled due to the lack of agenda items. Next we have Secretary and Treasurer report, Ms. Stevens.
The report is in your packet there with the graph. We have a total of $11,422,626 between cash and investments and all accounts. The reconciliations have been through August of 2024, and separately in your packet somewhere there's one sheet from Susan Stamey. I finally have gotten a letter from her the other day for these recent reconciliations. So that little note at the very bottom on the first page of my Secretary and Treasurer's report, I was still waiting on it at that time that I did this report, so that's been completed. We have 2 investments that are happening in October. One of them is from the operation maintenance account, the other one's from the wholesale impact fund account. They're both for $245,000. They will be reinvested. And I think that's it.
Do we have a motion?
Submit.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, we're going to Oklahoma County government update, and we want to hear from the county, any information. Move on to presentation discussion items. Matters related to the unified rate and financial cost of service study. Miss Angie Mettler, there she is.
I'm here.
There you are.
So I guess, Chris, did you just want me to go over what I heard from Bonnie If
with
you
regard to the, RIA grant, sure.
If you would, and answer questions, I would imagine there's gonna be some that would come out of.
Sure, so the planning money is available. It is available for those that have, service population less than 10,000. So that's puts Seneca out, it puts Oconee Joint out, so the others could apply for it. What Bonnie did say was that to keep in mind that the intent of their planning programs was not to be just a revolving door for you to keep coming back for more and more money each time. So her word of warning was there could be some other things that may be bigger fish to fry that come out of this that you may want to use that planning money for down the road. And then at that point too, collaboratively, you could access more money because it would be in that regional vein. So if it gets to the point where you're looking at doing something for the new authority makeup, or something that comes out of the ad hoc committee, or if any of the individual collection systems decide to do something together that then becomes a regional project. While this is an offshoot of the study's an offshoot, it really isn't a regional piece yet. So she just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Timing of it would be, you would not know if, one, you would not necessarily be secured that you would get the grant. If you did get it, the earliest the awards would be made would, or you would find out, would probably be the end of the year. And that would mean that you wouldn't be under a grant agreement till early 2025, January-ish. Then you have to go through the whole process of having them approve and vet the RFP. You have to advertise, you have to select, all of those sorts of things. So you probably wouldn't get started until, if everything fell in place, probably until April, May of next year. So there's some of that. But again, it is certainly within your purview to apply for it. I did check with her just because I've had this question come up. They are not changing the application deadline because of the storm. It is still going to be October 28th. So those applications are due then. So.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Next, we want action items.
Well, I do have a question, if we can go back.
Yeah.
So with that said, does that affect the way that we move forward, is looking at everybody piggybacking off of one study, or does it go to everybody does their own now?
The one thing I will say to that is what I would recommend that you do, regardless. Of course, all of this, the first domino to fall is the study being done by the authority overall, because then that then informs what you need to do in your study. It has to include what that rate model looks like, plus what you guys have individually with your collection system. And I would, if you're gonna each do it separately, I would at least get what the scope is gonna be for the study that the authority is gonna do, and use that as the model for what you ask to be done for each individual. That way you've got a whole bunch of apples and not some apples and some bananas and some oranges.
Is that scope constructed? I don't know if Angie, if that's a question for you.
It's Wildan. This is, so now that is being out, that's outside of our contract, our original contract. That's being handled separately, and my understanding is that Wildan was gonna be working with you to develop that, so.
I think I'm just gonna make an assumption here that after talking with Daryl following the meeting we had earlier, I guess it was last month now, that he may be kind of up in the air instead of it, because the last thing he heard was about the piggybacking option. So I mean, guess, without that. See what we can provide.
And the sooner you can, not putting pressure on you, but the sooner you can get that to us, the better, so that we don't lose too much time. Man, I could go, I mean, I've already started looking at different scopes of work for these, and I think what Angie said is a good idea, that we know what Wildan's gonna do for you, so we can make that as part of our scope of work rather than something that could be completely different.
What kind of projects you looking at already?
Well, knowing that we were gonna have to do this rate study, I've pulled a few that were done, and they're all written different.
Okay.
Yeah, they are, it can run the gamut. I mean, the idea of this is a more detailed, financial analysis with a cost of service aspect to it. Again, what we're trying to do is make sure that each individual entity understands the full magnitude of what it's gonna cost going forward. And that piece of it is of course what the authority has with their CIP and what's in that master plan, and then individually what you've got with regard to your individual system improvements.
Or whether it's a grant or grants, is there a cap on them?
Yeah, there will be. So they put a target number on for different types of planning level projects, and the rate study is generally in the, I'd say that it's probably in the $50,000+ range, like 50 to 70,000 is what they've imagined at RIA that they would be paying for most rate studies. Now again, you could make your case, but I think that's probably a very good ballpark that you'd be looking at.
Thank you.
So David, also for instance, for us, we would have to decide if we wanted to analyze our electric, water, and sewer rates,
Okay.
or if we want to do one just that has a limited scope for sewer rates for this stuff.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
we haven't discussed that we have not had that discussion with our council yet.
And that's a piece that Daryl mentioned as well, because, and that's one of the aspects that we saw, is that everybody's kind of a little bit different on how their different funds subsidize the sewer and what that looks like. So that's gonna have to be a piece of it that is decided up front, on that. If you're gonna continue to operate the way you always have, and have, your water electric fund subsidize the sewer when needed, or do you truly want your sewer to be a standalone enterprise and function that way?
Anybody else? Chris, you get what you need out of that?
Yes, sir, I did.
Move on to action items. You go ahead. You got a bunch of them.
All right, the first one would be essentially to approve to execute a notice to award to Bionomic Services Incorporated in the amount of $3,376,461. And this is for the SCIP funding conveyance system rehabilitation project. And that is included in your packet in Exhibit B. It also has the bid tabulation in there as well. But also, in some of the unknowns that are going to be encountered during that project, it's been requested of us to include about $700,000 for owner contingency, which would also be funded through the SCIP process for manhole rehabilitation, right-of-way rehabilitation and restoration, and some other items that either will be encountered as they're out there in the field and see that the work needs to be done, or that will be, for the right-of-ways, for instance, we don't know the amount of damage that's going to take place due to the conditions of the ground at the time that they do the work, whether it's wet or dry. They have to install any type of creek crossing or any other element to access these lines and the like. So that was what was stated, as far as what they felt would cover it. So they have asked, to go ahead and make that request now, and essentially basically pre-approve those offers that for me to execute those as necessary. Again, the funding will be coming from SCIP. Is that, it sounds like what we
Yeah,
did.
yeah, and so this is also contingent, so before Chris can execute the contract, all of this has to go to RIA and get approved. So the unexecuted contract goes to RIA, they approve it, comes back, then Chris can execute it. So the notice of award is conditioned upon RIA approval. The project is still under the budget that we had in the SCIP grant, including contingency. And as a matter of fact, we're giving back some contingency that's gonna be able to be moved toward the dewatering project. So this is overall, even with that 700,000, we're still under what we had planned for that.
That was estimated to be right at what the base bid
Correct.
was expected to be. So we came in about, $800,000 below what we thought for the base.
Do you want A and B as one motion or as two?
One motion would be fine, I believe.
Move to approve.
Adequate.
Second.
Motion second, any more discussion or question?
I will add, one thing we will do, is we will follow up with Bionomics just to make sure that they are, even though they may not start for a while based on the notice to proceed, that they're not getting pulled into any, disaster recovery things that are going on around us.
And I believe that they have requested that start sometime after the first of the year.
Which is fine, we've got plenty of time but we wanna, that's one of the things that we, in talking with RIA, cause they're not gonna, we've had several folks ask if RIA is gonna, extend the SCIP deadline, which they cannot, because it's a congressional action that has to happen due to the hurricane, impacts of this area. So their hands are tied unless Congress does something, but what they have said is it's probably good to just check in with your contractors and make sure that they're not going to be otherwise pulled into things, disaster recovery.
I just received, Angie, a form just today, a grantee disbarment certification form. Would I be okay just to go ahead and sign that and return it now, or does that need to wait until we get approval from RIA?
For you, yes. I mean, you're fine to sign it whenever, yeah.
Chris,
Yes.
just looking through the bid tabulation real quick, why is there such the erosion and sediment control, that unit price 35,000, for Bionomic, and the rest, the others are, well, other than in situ for technology. The other two are, like, you're looking at $5,800, $11,000, they're really $35,000. Is there something maybe they've noticed that somebody else didn't, or is that just some fluff in there just in case?
I don't know the answer to that. We had the same kind of thing happen with the Sewer South project. And if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong about this, but and Angie may know a lot more about this than me, but that stormwater and erosion prevention is an item where they can get compensated more up front by adding that. Is this what you see from your experience?
Yeah, and then again, not knowing, because this is a point repair type situation, and they don't know until they get there exactly what all they're gonna have to do. So a lot of times they build in more like if it turns into a full replacement instead of a repair, then they're gonna have to have more sediment erosion control, so.
So with Marty asking that question, that leads me to what I was gonna ask. How did, in both those with the higher rates are located in Missouri, how did they get note of this bid way down here in South Carolina? And I wonder if that impacted their higher costs.
I don't know the answer to that. I do know that a lot of this trenchless technology and rehabilitation, you don't have a lot of local firms that do that type of work anyways.
That is correct, and a lot of these have local crews, and I mean, let's face it, the southeast is hot with construction, so a lot of them are
doing stuff in the southeast now.
I know exactly where O'Fallon, Missouri is. I thought, man, what in the world, you wouldn't do that. Thank you.
Anything else? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Very good, move on number 2. Yes,
Right. Next item will be the personnel policy manual update, approval of that, and just to touch on a few of the changes for those that not at the F&A committee meeting to hear. The large changes were to update the employee substance abuse and testing policies for both the safety sensitive positions as well as the CDL testing, and safety sensitive would include post-accident and reasonable suspicion as well. FLSA safe harbor provision, which allows the employers to correct improper pay without penalty. Classification and minimum wage updates, and the parental leave and lactation support language that has been added since our last, or I should say required since our last update about 5 years ago.
Move to approve. I'll second.
any questions? Call for vote. I'm sorry, all in favor? It's too late. All opposed? Good, move on number 3.
Okay, portable toilet waste from outside of the area. So I'll give you a little bit of a background, maybe 3 sentences. Last week, Kyle had received a call from a company that was wanting to deliver hauled waste out of North Carolina in support of, I believe, a hospital that may not have had working sanitation services at that site. So they're having a hard time, I would imagine, finding anywhere that can take it in that general area. So they're reaching into South Carolina to find it. Well, our regulation currently does not allow that. It's very vague. It does state that we only can take it from within our service area. But I thought with that, in a way that we could help out, we may be able to take a little bit from time to time. When I say a little, it may be 1,000 or 2,000 gallons a day. It would have to work in with those that we do receive waste from in the service area, as well as to make sure that we are able to accept it in the plant, because that waste is a concentrated load that we would be taking. Kyle's supportive of it. Johnny, our operations plant operator, operations supervisors, fine with it. I support it, and we ask that we do allow that under this emergency circumstance.
So your crew is completely okay with it as far as the extra volume?
Yes, sir. This, again, the volume's not a lot. The volume, the hard part is what's in that volume that makes it the difficult part. So it would give us, we still would be able to refuse it. We can't take it, say this with a DHEC, PES guy sitting in the room. We wouldn't be able to take it if we felt it was something that was going to endanger the process of the treatment plant. So, we feel we could take, again, a small amount of it while still serving the existing customer base.
Yeah, they would have to have generator knowledge of what was in it.
Oh, okay. So they would transport it by vehicle from the affected areas up there and bring it in?
Yes, sir. They're gonna call back tomorrow. We told them it was gonna be brought up tonight, and they're gonna call back tomorrow to find out if we will be able to accept it. And again, there's a way that we can help out, and we can. It's a small, literally a very small way that we can help out. But if it can help them.
Do you know if it's Mission Hospital or another, like Haywood County Hospital?
I'm not sure. Kyle spoke with them, then we spoke about the regulation that affected our ability to take it, and that was the extent. They called last Thursday when I was out of the office.
Any concerns about the word spreading to other haulers that may be in the North Carolina area that may also be looking for a place in which helping one becomes 2 to 3?
And it may, again, I think that's one of those things that would be almost first come, first served. If it becomes a line there, then it would have to be whoever brought it here first. Now, we did get a request the other day. I believe there's some type of operations camp or something that may be set up somewhere in or around Seneca, New Spring areas, or are you familiar with anything over there? So in this, they're gonna have portable restroom trailers
Yeah, they're out there now.
gonna be there. And it's originating from in the county, so we don't have any way really to tell them no anyway. But no matter what, we do have a provision in the regulation that does allow us to not accept it if it's gonna be detrimental to the processing plant. Because if you lose the plant, that's a difficult thing we'll have to recover from. So no matter what, we have that option to do what we need to protect what we do right here.
I make a motion, we administer an emergency procedure to allow OJRSA to accept all portable toilet waste from outside the area to assist with tropical storm cleaning recovery efforts.
Second.
Any more questions?
Is there any reason or need to time bound it,
I'm sorry?
to create a time frame?
I don't know, because I don't think we do at this time. And I'm gonna touch on that in just a minute when I talk about the sewer use regulation, but I'll go ahead and say to you.
Well, my thinking was if you don't put an end date to it, then you've effectively suspended the rule indefinitely.
Well, that might very well be solved by saying when you have power back to that facility or sewer back to that facility, something like that, and make it more.
Well, they're not gonna,
And then review again, how long do you gotta give them?
Yeah, that's a good point.
We can review it each month.
3 months, then
Yeah,
review again.
yeah, they're not gonna wanna bring it here if they've got closer places to bring it to.
Yeah, the transfer cost is gonna way overcome that.
So, yeah, that's a good
Because
point.
they've contacted Greenville, I think they're taking some to the Greenville, Spartanburg, they're contacting anybody they can find that can take a little bit, because I believe they're trying to get rid of a large amount by giving a little bit of it away to as many places as they
I'll
can.
amend my motion to allow a period of 3 months with a review at that point.
Second.
Yes, everybody happy with that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Item 4, so this has to do with the sewer use regulation. Michael Tranum in what was emailed to you, there was the first couple of pages was a memorandum from him stating that he did not find any issues with any of the review of the proposed changes to the regulation. Then the next 3 pages are a summary of what was given out last month, talking about the changes to it. But when all of this stuff happened with the hurricane, and this is something that is out there for consideration, but it's something that I spoke to in conjunction, I spoke with Michael in conjunction with thinking about putting this in the regulation. This has to do with what we just voted on, to allow in these types of emergency circumstances, having that memorialized in the regulation to be able to accept that waste for what is stated as a, find it here, an emergency declaration by the President of the United States or by a federal agency authorized to do so, and or the Governor of South Carolina, that it would allow the Executive Director the authorization to make the determinations as to whether we would accept that as almost in a way of mutual aid assistance, if you will. So again, that has been added as really about a week ago or less, but that's the only change that has been made. We can move it up the chain with that in there or take it out. But either way, Michael has reviewed it with and without it, and he states that it's ready to go to the Department of Environmental Services for their legal review.
So is it in there right now, or we would have to proactively add it into
It
it?
looked like he added.
It's added and it's in the memorandum. I did update the memo to include it.
Move
So
to approve as presented.
When I saw the email come with the agenda, it was over 300 pages, I thought, what in the world? So I did not look at that. Wow.
David.
Cause I usually print it out, and the printer said 322 pages, I said, whoa, stop.
You did read it all though, right?
Well, I read that.
All right, we have a motion, do we get a second?
Yeah, second.
You have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you. Item 5, this is one where I will introduce Ms. Metlin. I had taken all the nominations that I had received from the cities and provided that to Angie, I guess it was about 10 days or so ago.
Yeah.
And now I'll just let her work her
Yeah.
magic and I'll
So,
kind of sit back.
we're going through the process of vetting, the nominations made, but there were some things that I wanted to talk about with you guys, so I don't have all the recommendations today, so just tell you that. A couple of things, I know we got a number of, with regard to the individual entities appointing your particular folks. It was not my intent to vet those. It was my intent for you guys to make a decision. Now, it looks like there are some that have multiple people that they've recommended. It would be my recommendation, and I can provide this, if we can get a good cross-section where we've got administrative operations and other staff across the board since each one gets one vote, I can make that recommendation for you all if you guys want me to do that. That's perfectly fine. Glad to do that. For the other candidates, so what I'm doing is getting bios and that sort of thing from everybody that's been recommended. I will tell you that for some, they will probably be lower on the list. I'm trying to avoid to put anybody in those positions that would have either a current or a potential apparent conflict of interest in sitting in that position. So I think I've got enough to vet, and we'll be fine. That was one of the reasons why I didn't necessarily want paid consultants to be sitting on that sort of thing. I saw my name. I don't think I need to be on here. I think it needs to be, again, I'm trying to get industry experts, but ones that aren't necessarily being paid, a paid consultant right now, and that sort of, again, trying to keep the appearance of any conflict out of it whatsoever. I would ask you this question, and I don't know if you guys have talked about it, but it may come up. It may not, particularly for some of those folks that we're going to ask to sit on as the industry experts. If you guys have considered some level of a stipend or anything for their participation. It may not matter, but I would like to have the answer if they would like to do that, if they ask me about it. I'm not thinking it needs to be anything outrageous or anything like that, but maybe just compensating them for a little bit of their time. One of the things that I had thought about in my mind about how this ad hoc committee could work is it wouldn't necessarily be an overwhelming time commitment initially, and perhaps the meetings could be structured where you could have them start before lunch and finish after, and have lunch brought in, so you've got a working lunch going on to try and get as much done in that period of time as possible. And maybe you only have one meeting a month until some of this other information that you're going to be waiting on from the attorneys, from the rate studies, from all that starts coming in, and then maybe have 2 meetings a month toward the end or something like that. But I think by telling them that it's a finite period, that the time commitment is not going to be like part-time kind of thing where you're not asking them to come in here and work 30 hours a week or something like that. But I just throw the stipend out there as a question.
for consideration as I go through this final process of discussing it with folks.
I think a stipend would be appropriate, you got mileage that's gonna be involved, and, my other question is, I think one of them was, a legal representative,
Right.
right? I mean, so if you have meetings during the day, you're taking away billable hour opportunities for them, they're
Correct.
probably gonna expect to be paid for their representation on this board.
Correct.
So if that goes with a consultant, you've got a number of categories where you're gonna be looking for a consultant of some kind. I think it's gonna be difficult to find an attorney or a consultant willing to serve during daytime hours,
Right.
working hours.
Right.
And lose billable hour opportunities.
True. And the attorney piece, I'll just tell you that there aren't that many that do that kind of work in the state. There just aren't. So,
I mean, that aside, I certainly would support a stipend of some kind.
what I'll do is just, if everybody's in agreement, I won't make any commitments, of course, but say that that could be a consideration if that is something that, folks want.
Well, I'll say we have a partnership with the Lake Hartwell Partnership Clean Water, and we have an attorney and a couple real estate people that volunteer. It's only, they meet, just like you said, meet in the morning, they bring breakfast, there for an hour, have a short meeting, what we're gonna set up, how we're gonna do cleanups, what we need to do to take care of the clean water. So that kind of idea does work in some situations. It just depends on the people you have. We just are lucky to have a couple of good people in Anderson, whereas in other places I've worked in the past, I haven't.
Right.
So it just depends on who you can get involved.
Yeah.
And I may be naive, but I think this is gonna actually be time consuming.
Yeah.
I don't think this is gonna be one meeting a month, we're done in 3 months.
Yeah, no, you're not.
So-
I'm just saying, like, initially, it's probably only one meeting a month, but when you start getting all the information coming back in, it probably is gonna be, a few more. But it's not gonna be, again, it's not gonna be 30 hours a week or something like that.
Do we need to turn on the stipend now?
I
Now?
I don't think so. I think I can just say, if that question comes up, I can say that you guys will be willing to do that.
It might be helpful to have it,
It's
So
fine if
now
y'all
it-
want to, yeah.
since we already have a number, what's the thoughts of having it as what our per diem is already, which is
That's what I
$60
was
a meeting.
thinking, that right there.
And that is what, Chris?
60 per meeting.
60 for
Per
me?
meeting, yeah. If you're on finance committee and then you come to a board meeting, that'd be $120 a month.
Gotcha, okay. And that covers mileage and everything.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sometimes the meetings, of course, last longer than others, but that's the basic rate, $60 a meeting.
Okay.
I agree with that.
We all in agreement on that?
How's the budget set for that?
I can move money, we should go. We've come in, just, as you've heard, we've come in under budget, if not substantially under budget. for
Bob
several
saved you $60
projects.
already.
That's right.
And also, isn't the new board gonna be 5 instead of 9? Is that not a correct statement?
No, I think that's what this committee will help decide.
Ultimately decide.
So
That was a recommendation.
Yeah,
but
that one's right there, knocked out some.
All right, so that all we need on this? We're not collecting the members.
No, I guess, so what is the plan, AG? Would it be that we would need to select those now at the November meeting?
Yeah, I will, it's up to y'all if you wanna have a special meeting or do anything like that, but yeah, I should definitely have them by the November meeting, so.
Because I think that fits in the time frame of November 13th. Is that when we have to have the committee formed by or have the first meeting
Yeah,
by?
formed by, yeah.
Okay.
I guess there was still one other question in there about the city representatives.
Yeah, so I think, just for instance, I think Seneca y'all put in 3 recommendations, Walhalla put in 1 and Westminster put in 2. Oconee County and OJRSA only put in 1 each, so everybody gets 1. And so if you look at, you've got Celia, who was the Walhalla representative, and so she's admin. Then, so you could, the other Westminster should either be an ops person, and then Seneca an other person, or flip that. So just so you got a good cross section. But again, my intent was not to dictate to you guys who you wanted as your representative, but I did want there to be a good cross section of folks that had different roles and responsibilities coming from each of them. And I'm not vetting those. I mean, those are your choices, but I'm just telling you what I would recommend. So.
So when you get that information, Angie, since I guess there's nothing really to be done with this tonight, would you mind sending any bios or whatever you have out, just send it to everybody? Do you have everyone's email address? If you just want to send it out, or you can send it to me and I'll disseminate it either way.
Yeah, be glad to.
But as soon as you get that, we'll go ahead and get that out so people can begin considering who may want to serve in those roles.
Yep.
I thought that's what they were doing.
Yeah, that's what
That's what they're doing.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll be glad to share.
Your selection, share
Selections,
them.
correct.
But it's, so, but I guess I'm a little confused here. So who is deciding ultimately who is gonna fill those other slots? Is that you?
Yeah, that was.
Okay.
I was gonna vet those and give you my recommendations
And we would
with the
accept
bios.
Okay. And I was thinking that you were gonna give the bios and everybody was gonna vote on the names that were presented. Okay, all right, I misunderstood.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
thank
that was the intent. So, and that way, again, that's why I'm trying to keep conflict of interest out of it. I'm trying to be very, very specific as to how we go about this. So.
Thank you.
To your number 6, if you guys want to go ahead and decide where you would meet or that sort of thing, I don't know if that makes a difference.
I really think it would be wise to go ahead and select a date, because I know even typically with me, I'm about 2 weeks behind, and I know some of the others in here that are running a city and a county, it's even more difficult to get work into their schedule. I know Ms. Brock, she was gonna try to be here so that she could help, but I think she stated as long as it didn't necessarily interfere with one of her council meetings, and it was toward the end of this month or the beginning of next month, she should be okay with that. But
So I'm assuming these meetings are gonna be open to the public, or is this a closed meeting for discussion?
Well, you guys don't. Well, that wouldn't be a quorum.
it would depend on
Who it is.
who there is. So if you have the three city administrators in there, you're gonna have a quorum of.
Yeah, so see,
finance
that's
and
another reason.
administration committee.
My recommendation is that they be, I think you guys have got to do some work, outside the public, but.
But if you look at everybody that Seneca and Westminster presented, we're all on this board, aren't we?
Correct,
So if you pick 3, you've got 4.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who it is.
Or at least a committee.
yeah, at least a committee, that was my question, so.
Yeah.
Well, you just call for executive session if you gotta have something that's.
Sure, that's fine,
You can do that.
Well, I was just asking that because of the location.
Well, not only
It would need to be
location.
here or in the county somewhere.
Not on location, when you start trying to schedule, every one of these people are busy.
Yeah.
They've probably got calendars booked right now for months. I know Amanda would, I know Kevin does.
Well, I don't, and also too, you mentioned executive session. We'll have to get an opinion on that, but I don't know that it would qualify for any of the exemptions for executive session.
At this point, I think we all know what's gonna be discussed, and, it is what it
It
is.
is what it is.
Well, we've always maintained a transparent and accountable
That's,
operation,
exactly,
so.
you gonna try to pick a date, that way she could give the prospective members of the committee a date? Or at least come up with 3 dates?
So you guys would meet and
Just in the event I'm on that committee, I like the idea of lunch. If I'm not, I don't care if it's
Yeah.
But that may help make it easier for some folks rather than
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah,
So-
our next meeting's November 4th.
November 4th, that's what I was making sure of, okay.
Was, I think it's the 3rd, the 4th, maybe, that's a Tuesday, and that's election day as well, it's November 4th.
No,
November
no,
4th
that's
is
a
a
Monday.
Monday.
November 4th is a
Election
Monday.
is on Tuesday.
What?
You gotta get to 2020.
Yeah, you gotta buy
Yeah,
that
that's right,
phone.
look, see at the top.
And
Monday,
Democrats put
November
that on
3rd.
there.
Are you looking at 27?
I
or
see
28?
Monday, November 4th.
What year are you
Yeah,
looking
but
at?
you see that, but Monday, November 3rd.
And Democrats mess with your phone, didn't
Yeah,
they?
dude, do it
It
that
does
way.
say it right there.
Yeah.
It's 4th up here, but right there it says 3rd.
That's
US Virgin
No
Islands.
wonder you're always late, Chris.
That's strange, even when I move it around, it does the same thing. Okay.
The first, our meeting will be the first Monday of November, November the 4th.
Vote twice if you can.
That's right. And do it often.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Vote on it.
Until you not come back, that's right.
So we got to meet by the 13th,
You don't have to meet by the 13th, you just
We
have to
have
have the committee formed.
select, okay.
Then you can get into the holidays, it's gonna get
Boy, you got that.
Yeah, I mean, again, you, maybe set up a meeting just to kind of, everybody come together. You're not gonna have the legal information until maybe December-ish timeframe.
I think we need to wait until we get the committee selected when we try and set a date and time.
Yeah.
They're all gonna have a calendar full.
Yeah, I think we should wait.
Because you got a lot of holidays,
Mhm.
and you got Veterans Day, you got Thanksgiving holidays.
Angie, when you select these people, well, we're gonna have to vote on them, but you could ask them, you know, would you have some time available early December,
Yeah.
late November?
Yeah, sure,
That way we can at least know
right,
who couldn't be.
right.
And there's no need
It's
for
gonna
me
be
to look
hard.
at my calendar if I'm not on the committee.
Right. But I know as busy as you guys are, the ones she's picking, they're gonna be just as busy. Especially toward the end of the year.
This phone says the first of the year's April.
Y'all thought I was crazy, I'm glad.
I can confirm it then.
Don't get the new iPhone update.
So the AI technology will keep you floating.
Okay, so I guess we'll just hold off on 5 and 6, and no need to
Yeah.
take any action.
That's the only solution.
But I'll kind of get an idea of the folks as to what days of the week are best, and, yeah, just kind of play it like that.
I'll move on to executive director's discussion and compliance matters, Chris.
All right, thank you. A few things here. The tropical storm Helene, I believe most, if not everybody around this table had seen the updates that were sent out for about a week's time. It was amazing. We stored at some point in time anywhere from 10 to 15 million gallons, whether it was on site here or off-site in our 3 million gallon basin, and there's no telling how many gallons we actually stored in the pipelines themselves that just sat there. But as Mr. Wilkie knows, and for those of you that don't know, fall's been with DHEC, now the Department of Environmental Services, for, you said 30 years. But we were in communication with Paul and Amy Tao, and I think everybody's met Amy. And we had to make the decision on that Friday morning when everybody was dealing with the power outages. We were actually dealing with a lot of the rain that we had received the day before. And we made the decision, we had to shut the plant down. We had to shut the pump stations off because the 6 million gallon impoundment behind you, it was full within a few inches of the top of that berm. We were afraid we were gonna potentially lose the dike of that pond. There's nowhere else to keep it. And there's no way to push it through the plant any faster than what we were at that time. So the plant was offline, pump stations were offline for about 24 to 26 hours. We estimated that we had, that what we could calculate and report was about 5.5, 5.6 million gallons of spillage of wastewater during that time. Although it's very well possible it could have been more than that. There's just no way to make that actual determination. A number of our easements were actually underwater and were overtopping the manholes. So as water was going into the manholes, we were basically just pumping it into the plant itself. So we were pumping the creeks down, which led to us filling up these basins as quickly as we did. So now we met Friday afternoon. We actually got together for lunch in here, and we went over the event to try to find out what we need to do differently internally. And one of the items that continues to come up here is the need to do something along especially these low-lying areas. If you drive out, go across a bridge, look to your left and look to your right, you can see where the water line of Comoros Creek was. The manholes on both sides of the road were underwater, which meant when we were pumping it in. When we shut the pumps off, water was flowing out of the system. But I think we're gonna have to do something, because I think those have been set, if I remember correctly, they were set at a 50-year flood elevation. Well, we've had 3, if not maybe even 4 of these 50-year floods in my 7.5 years here. So I don't know if we need to consider sometime down the road raising some of these manholes or finding out a better way to make them watertight. But that would be a considerable effort going up each of these cross-country lines that are along some of the creeks. Some of the areas we had, I'd like to think we had fairly equal rainfall across our system. We received anywhere from 9 to 10.5 or so inches at some of our locations. But some of our creeks, we didn't notice any impact much at all. Like, we didn't see much in the way of Seneca Creek rising up over where our pump station is and affecting there, over at Millbrook where we've had flood problems in the past. But we sure did here. So again, it's a bad situation. It's bad for everybody here. Everybody face their own challenges. Some very unique to their system, and others that are in common with what everybody else has. And I'm sure that we'll be working to clean up for a number of months, but it could have been a lot worse. It really could have been a lot worse.
Can you get a count of what areas were impacted and overflowed that we would need to look at raising?
Well, I can get a count on those. I could possibly do that by this time, or maybe even by O&P committee. We can look at something there with it. But
Where we've got these narrow valleys with these creeks running through it, they're gonna go up. I mean, that's just, where they're wider, I guess, they probably didn't.
well, and that's the interesting thing about Seneca Creek, because there's some tight pinch points down there with that one that we didn't have noticeable issues with. But here, that, I'm assuming it's the same cause every time, and it may have no impact for all I know. But just by nature of what it does, we have a dam located downstream. So after we had the last flood event, maybe a couple of floods ago, we spoke with Oconee County Emergency Services Director, Scott Crime. And we let him know about the issues we had with the dam. We couldn't find anybody that could operate it. Nobody really even knew who owned the thing. I don't know if it changed hands or what. Well, Scott did some digging. He was able to get hold of the operator of that dam, and we set a trigger mark. So the USGS has a gauge down on the bridge that will measure water, the elevation, the level in the creek, and we made a determination there as to when that thing rises to a certain point, then they'll go ahead and notify the dam to go out there and adjust it and open up whatever gates that they have to do. So, well, this time we went ahead and did this a couple of days in advance. The guy went out there, opened it up, but from what I understand, this is not I did not speak to him directly, but what was told to me by those that did was that they were only able to get the gate open halfway because of silt issues. Well, I think that thing had been cleaned out about 20 years ago or so. I think I was working in DEAC when I remember that they'd gone and dredged it before, drained it and cleaned it out. But apparently it's got a lot of silt in it again, this impact and that gate.
All their banks have closed in, the depth is shallow.
It's a reservoir, so yeah.
It's their holding capacity is minimal now.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that, that had something to do with it or not. I don't know. But again, that's third and fourth time that severe flood. One of those times was a 100+ year flood that took our pump station out of commission back in 2019. This one was nowhere near that 2019 flood, but nonetheless, we did all we can by berming and shoring up temporarily around the system, try to keep the flood waters off, but it never reached quite that high this time.
Well, I know that Richland County and Lexington County both have had to go in and build up the height of their manholes in several places around Murray and downstream based on EPA's consent order with them. So I mean, that's kind of a first way to address it, I guess, from what I've heard.
And we've got, Duck Pond. We raised all the manholes at Duck Pond Reservoir back a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, except for 3. And the reason we did substantial work to those manholes, but we put just a flat top on top of them, but we kept them at a little bit of a lower elevation so that they wouldn't be classified by OSHA as needing fall protection when we were to get on top of the devices. So it was a strategic reason we did that, but to counteract that, if you look at them, they've got those candy cane vents on them, and they were supposed to have watertight lids. Well, the watertight lids, I think, held. But with so much water coming into the sewer system and that internal pressure, the sewers, unless it's a force main, it's not meant to operate with pressure inside the system. It pushed the whole top of that lid off, and water was coming out. And then when we turned the pump station, when we turned the pump stations off, it was coming out. But there was a time where it was actually going in when we were pumping. So we've got, we have some issues like that we have to go out there and make the repair. But I'm thinking, talking to Kyle, we may go and just raise those manholes up and do whatever we need to do there. I thought that, was hoping that when the county made those improvements to the culvert, that we wouldn't have that flooding in that area any longer after it washed away back in 2019. So we were somewhat surprised it did back up the way that it did this time.
A lot of rain.
It was a lot of rain.
Quickly too, quickly.
I'll keep moving on. We did have one manhole structure over at Martin Creek that it did the same exact thing happen. Internal pressure pushed the top of it off. We had a overflow there, and it was earlier on in the event. And I think it's one that's happened before. So and that's part of the area that we are currently looking at now. We just had the CCTV work completed over there, and it'll be assessed in the next coming months as we provide all that data over there to the firm. That's already been sent over there for them. And then regarding the corrective action plan, Allison had sent out a notification to all the cities that that was gonna be extended just due to the storm and the impact that we were having with that. Moving on to number 3, the regional feasibility planning study grant update. So in your packet, and this may be the last thing in there, exhibit E. This is one that we had, some of us at this table had heard it before from RIA, but we actually have it in writing from them in the monitoring report. So on page 2 of 3, under section 5, the last sentence there states the participating sewer systems include Anderson County, Seneca, Walhalla, Westminster, and West Union. And then the very last sentence down on that page, and this has to do with the assistance with funding, as Andy just spoke about a minute ago, the efforts to act on the recommendations and organizational efforts outlined in this plan may be a consideration in evaluations of future funding requests for OJRSA and the participating systems. So I guess we do have it in writing now that was what we understood back in 2022 when we met with Ms. Ammons. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that was in there, as the few of us that went down there to meet with her were told at that time that it could possibly be.
So I'm looking at your number 5, and I don't read anything that says Anderson County, it just says participating.
It does, and it's only.
Okay.
Did I say Anderson?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oconee County.
I was fixing to
You said
say your
Anderson.
phone
Oconee
affecting you
County.
more than you think it is.
Sorry about that. Oconee County.
Kidding, Dave.
Good catch.
It may not be the phone.
That was a phone. That was a phone. Number 4, the master plan consideration. So Weston, Sampson, and Bolton and Mink, they had a recommendation that the substantial stakeholder group that was involved in the planning process for that they be involved. And I think their recommendation was to have a meeting twice a year. I don't know if that's, could or should do that, but I do think it would be worth having something planned to have that a meeting with that group at least once a year. So
And who's that group? Who's in that stakeholder group?
all the cities were, the county, some developers were in there. You had maybe Upstate Forever had an invite, the Lake Hartwell
Is this
folks.
when we had it at the Walhalla Depot?
We did, yes, sir. And I think, so we had one here, I think, and we had one up there also, and then we had one over at the Seneca Water Plant when they, I think, Catherine and Jason gave out that final, the preview of what the recommendations or the thoughts were gonna be. So what my thoughts were, and just to gauge any thought here, if somebody else had a different idea, was to have that performed in conjunction with the O&P committee, maybe at one of our spring meetings, and just have it done. If we're gonna do it once a year, just have it kind of on the calendar to be done once a year, February, March, April, sometime in that time frame.
And what's the point of the meeting, Chris?
Just to discuss and get updates as to where we are, where the cities are with any of the work they're doing, because they wanted to make sure that Catherine loved using, I guess it's a buzzword now in business, silos. Remember her talking about the silos, that she didn't want everybody operating in a silo, that she wanted everybody to kind of be working from the same sheet of music. And it would be something like that. You've got work going on here. What, is there anything that you need of us? Is there anything we need of you? Is there anything that the public would like to see done different? We're not, but just, maybe it is an update to them as well. Mr. Roy, you guys, I think you were at some of those meetings too, weren't you? So that was my thought. Again, we paid a lot of money for a recommendation, and I don't want to not heed some of the items that were suggested in there that we do undertake. So, any thoughts on that?
Any feedback from the county council about that study?
I've not received any. None. They had recommendations in there specifically for the county as well.
And to that end, we did say that the county needs to do the rate on the feasibility study, that they need to do the same rate study that everybody else is gonna do, since they're gonna be part of the authority potentially, and they have sewer.
And all the same thing with West Union. We
Yeah,
met
we
with
met
Linda
with West
Oliver
Union.
last week and told her the same thing. They were participants in this study as well, so what everyone has to do, they've gotta do also. Where am I here? Sewer South Phase 3 project. Those plans, I finished the review of those last week, and those are approved now. The pump station calculations, the plan that they had, which the routing slightly changed several months ago, everything with that looks good to me. So I believe that they're going to ask soon for a conditional acceptance of flow for conveyance and treatment. Once I get a little bit more data back from what they're gonna put on their DES construction permit application. So once they get that, I'll generate my letter. That letter will go to Oconee County, who is gonna be the owner of that system, and that will be submitted by the county through their engineer to DES for that construction permit. From what I understand and talking with Lee Brackett with Thomas and Hutton, that they had asked DHEC how this, is there gonna be flow assigned, DES, if there was gonna be flow assigned to this project, because that would impact our impact fees, the way we do it, that if that there was gonna be so much flow assigned to that project, what are we gonna do? So what was told to me by Lee was that they're gonna be able to do that as a zero flow project, and we would assign flow applications we permitted it, which means that if somebody applied for a connection to that line, we would assign and get that line to flow at that time. So, and then we would collect those impact fees, much like we do currently with any line that's out there that exists now.
So you're gonna wanna get an approval to operate with zero flow. And then as owners come online and become connected, you're gonna add flow each time one comes on?
Yes, sir. I think that's what we had agreed to. Otherwise, and this has to do with internal matters and not DES or
Okay.
state matters, but it has to do with the way that we collect impact fees. So
I'm just not familiar with
Yeah.
it working that way because like we, local office, we're probably not gonna know each time somebody comes online, it'll go through Columbia, it'll be
Mhm.
approved, add to your volume, and then we'll get notified later.
Yeah,
So
it is a unique way of doing things, because the only times I've ever been familiar with a zero flow assignment is with a pump station,
Mhm.
not with a linear gravity project.
Right.
So it will be different in that regard, but it was a way that we were gonna be able to do it where we wouldn't be tacking several 100,000 gallons worth of flow and assigning it to the treatment
To something
plant
that's
and
not-
taking away capacity from everybody else.
Okay.
So that's the reason why it was done that way.
I just
Requested
need
to
to
be done.
probably relay this to Joseph, so.
Yeah, okay. And if he has any questions, he can call me or call Lee Brackett or any of the folks at Thomas Hut.
Okay.
Explain to him. Bridget Clark's aware of it.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
who
well,
they
let me see
spoke
this.
to in Columbia, so she was able to work it out that way.
Chris, you
Yes,
said
sir.
something about the county owning this, from exit 4 back to where?
To Yoder's, where we are installing that
59
line
and
now, the
280.
59,
Okay.
West Fairplay Boulevard.
Okay.
It'll tie in there near or at Yoder's at that intersection.
Okay, but we'll still own the welcome station.
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it.
Yes, sir. We'll still have that. Phase 2 update. So the only thing I think we're really waiting on right now is for Moorhead to finish up their red line or record drawings for that project and get those submitted for review. And then from what I understand from Davis and Floyd, that should be all that's needed to be done to get the permit to operate. And we're bypassing the partial permit to operate, and I think the one thing that we'll receive on that will be the final. I don't know where Moorhead is with those record drawings, but hopefully that'll be done sometime fairly soon. The certificate for substantial completion will be issued once that final permit to operate has been received. And finally, there's still a few small punch list items that need to take place. Moorhead's been out working on those. They feel like they've knocked most, if not all of them out. I'm gonna be riding out there maybe next week, if not, it'll be early the following week with John Reynolds, and we'll do a walk through that entire project, looking it over. And we do have an appointment already scheduled with RIA to do the grant review for that funding. So they'll be coming up sometime within the next 10 days or so to meet with us to do that. So we are right there near the end of it,
So,
finally.
the electrical, situations we were having toward the end of June, has all been reconciled?
Yes, sir, all that has been fixed. They installed some, I think that what they ended up doing was installing 2 or 3 additional air release valves in that
Okay.
force main. And they were able to get up to the flow, the design flow for that station at the Welcome Center. Contract operations for county-owned assets. So there's an intergovernmental agreement that we have between us and Oconee County that was executed back in 2019. And it is very specific in there. I went and looked at it again today just to make sure that I had this correct, that it is only for us to operate phase 1 of county-owned assets. And phase 1 is defined as Golden Corner. I don't know that they knew there was gonna be a phase 3, or if or when anything else would happen, who would own whatever it would be. But no matter what, that's what it's gonna be. So I think I mentioned this a while ago, there's gonna need to be an amendment to the contract. So I spoke with Ms. Brock even last week, but even before that, they're aware of it as well. So we'll get to work on some of that and get it before the board for consideration, and eventually review and execution for that.
Is there anything more complicated than just amending it to include that additional area?
That's probably all that needs to be done. That's probably all that would need to be done. So the funny thing is, we had an agreement, and then there was an amendment to define what phase 1 was, and now there's gonna be an amendment to the amendment. So it'll be the second amendment on that original contract that we're all within a month apart or so. And then I think there was even a Scrivener's error that had to be corrected because one of them had the wrong date or something like that on there. So a lot of paperwork for a small amount of deliverables on it. And then finally, and this had, some of y'all, or if not everybody, has heard about us working with the residents of the Wexford community. So I'll be attending not a public meeting, but a meeting with their neighborhood association tomorrow night. I know that you guys have received voter calls from the residents there. Senator Alexander's gotten calls from some of the residents there. And we're working with Seneca Light and Water to try to figure out what that permanent fix is. Seneca Light and Water has they've had an engineering consultant go and do an assessment. They're putting the recommendations in place. We are one of the calls that we've gotten was from odor inside of a house. Kyle went out there. I don't even know that he went out there. He spoke to her over the phone to find out that this lady that lived there had a bathroom she didn't ever use, and the P-trap had dried up. So odor was coming in through a dry P-trap in the house. She put water in it, and she said that took care of the problem. So we've got some hydrogen sulfide or odor detectors in the manholes on the gravity line behind the residences, and we have now, I think we have one that hangs up outside that can detect up to parts per billion level. help us try to find out when we're having the problems, what the problems are, and what needs to be done to fix them. So,
Where's this community at?
off of Davis Creek Road,
Okay.
and just to let you know, Scott, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I let Bob know, and I think he was gonna, he said y'all had a council meeting tomorrow night, so he wasn't sure if he was gonna be able to attend that meeting, but he said he was gonna try to have somebody from Light and Water attend it as well, so. And that's all I have.
Very good. Next on the commission discussion, anybody have anything you wanna bring up? Questions, comments, or congratulations, or complaints?
I'm just glad everybody came out of all this well, and your communities, I mean, some were just in western Walhalla, and it wasn't City of Walhalla's problem, or just getting power turned back on yesterday, so this was some kind of event.
We were lucky.
Yeah, we were.
We sure were, brother.
Very fortunate.
I hear a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.